All right, here we are. Hi, I'm Gaurab Ganguly, Senior Vice President at Netguru, and your host today for Disruption Talks. And I'm super thrilled to welcome our guest today, Armen Momejian. He's the head of AI initiatives at ALDO, one of the world's most iconic fashion and lifestyle brands. Armin has been at the forefront of redefining what AI really means inside a global lifestyle organization, right? His work spans everything across AI powered demand forecasting to merchandising intelligence to agentic systems. Absolute pleasure to have you, Armin, on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Gaurab. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me, Netguru.
Yeah. Talking about everything that we spoke before this event, etc., etc. You've had quite a journey, right? Starting as a product manager, now heading product and program manager, now heading AI at Aldo. I'm really interested, and I'm sure that people are also interested in knowing from a person with your portfolio, what was that tipping point for you that made you say that, okay, AI is where the future is. That's where I really want to exclusively focus on to. What really was that tipping point, if I may ask, Carmen? Jumping directly into the point.
Sure. So, as you stated, I had my journey is actually in digital e-commerce. So I've been doing it for many years, and I was exposed actually to AI during my tenure as head of digital at Aldo before my current role. So I was already uh, you know, before we forget that AI existed before even ChatGPT. So it's not something that existed when OpenAI launched it in 2022. But I was first exposed to AI actually back in 2018, 2019 at the Alto Group, where we had an advanced analytics team, and we had built we called it similar looks. So essentially, two images of products that we would compare and recommend products to consumers when they would shop. So that was AI essentially. With that team, we were able to build this. But the tipping point was when we at Aldo decided to build machine learning models to grow revenue at Aldo. So that was an initiative that was started in 23, which is what I've been doing for the past few years in AI. But that was really the tipping point. How can we increase revenue for the business using intelligence and using data to its full potential, essentially?
Yeah, and good that you mentioned about image comparison, etc. Because when we talk about fashion, when we talk about retail, we've often seen videos, audio, picture, image recognition, etc., etc. So from that perspective, when you look at it today versus when you really started off, where do you see uh, commerce, retail, keeping probably e-commerce and fashion lifestyle into perspective? Where do you see that heading with perspective of customer experience, AI? Where do you see that biggest potential, and where do you see AI per se heading into that space, Armin?
Yeah, sure. It's there's a lot of thought about that, like where things are going. So things are already changing. As you noticed, Shopify is now integrated into, or will be integrated at scale through ChatGPT. So people are getting used to this conversational, let's say, experience. So what I think the future is going to be is search. Search is slowly fading away. Not to say that it's dying completely, but it's kind of fading away, and it requires you to already, for search to work, you already need to know what you're looking for. But traditional search works only when you know exactly the product or the name of the product that you're looking for. Let's say I'm looking for Nike Airs or leather Chelsea boots, for example. But most shopping is not done like that. If you really think about it, it's something that you need. So let's say I need an outfit for my best friend's wedding, or I need sneakers for a Coachella event. What AI allows is that it lets you start with the problem or the feeling that you have, not the product or the product name per se. It's less about search, but more about conversation search, because that's how we think in our head. So this is especially powerful in categories where people know terminologies, but they don't really know the products. Let's say skincare, or for example, for fashion or electronics. You don't really know the specific product, but you have a problem and you have a feeling about that problem. How do you actually express that in a conversation is what's really going to be shifting here. So it's we're moving from find what you know to discovering what you need, essentially, in natural form. So this is one area I see change in. The other is the way we communicate to shop. So you said before, voice and video. So I think that we will be removing friction as much as possible by introducing more natural ways to discover or look what you really need. So voice will make commerce very accessible and very ambient. So you can use your voice when you're cooking. Let's say you can shop or while you're driving, or even while you're trying on some clothes in your house. You can use voice to shop. You don't need to stop and actually type something. It's just something very intuitive, very natural. And video even takes this further, because video will understand the physical context around you just by having a set of eyes, essentially. So you point your camera, let's say, in the mirror while you're changing, and it's gonna recommend you some shoes that would go with that outfit, for example. Like visual commerce, let's say. And that's where I see the future of commerce going with this AI craze, essentially.
Yeah, I think that also opens up the entire gate of hyper personalization, wherein when I search, the results that a person gets are more generic, one size fits all kind of a thing. But when you're actually conversing, it's more it's based basically on the LLM's understanding and the ecosystem's understanding of you as a buyer as you move down the path. And I guess personalization kind of kicks in over there. So is that something that's in works, if I may ask you? Is that something that you guys are already exploring?
Yes, and I think that the consumer experience in ecom is also going to shift a lot with this AI. We are using some of those at Aldo, but not at the scale that it should be. And but I think from an ecom perspective, the biggest potential that I see with AI for consumer experience is going to be everything about, like you said, like hyper personalization. But what is really hyper personalization? It's not just about showing you something that's unique that speaks to you specifically. It's about being relevant at the right time.
Right.
But the way you can do this is by knowing who your consumers are, or who you're talking to. So this is why I think that in the future we will be having like these shopping assistants, or you'll have like a shopping passport, essentially, that will know you better than you, maybe even. And for example, you're gonna say something like, I have a wedding next summer, and my budget is under X amount. And your agent, or your shopping agent, or your shopping, because I don't want to use the word agent, everybody is using these words, but let's say if your shopping passport or your personal shopper will know your size, will know the timing that you need this. It will know your preferences on if you like to pick it up in the store or have it delivered. And this is really going to work in the background to handle the shopping experience for you. It's going to see if the item that you're looking for within the constraints you set it, if they're available, where it's available, if you can return this item if it doesn't fit you. It will know how price sensitive you are. So essentially, it's going to lower the friction of decisions basically you need to take. And it's also going to help retailers because they will be able to convert a consumer that knows exactly what is it that's needed for that consumer, so that converts. So that's good also for brands. um yeah, so I think that's where I see personally like the biggest potential for growth in ecom, um with this, with AI essentially.
Yeah, so necessarily, like you said, a digital passport or a digital twin of a human being per se, working across different ecosystems, whether it's on
Yeah.
commerce, travel, logistic, whatever it is, right? I can start imagining how travel will start looking if this were to be true. Uh,
Hmm.
you spoke about, and everyone is talking about agentic, and people 6 months back it was about AI agents, now it's about agentic. So how do you really differentiate as to, and probably in your context, specifically into Aldo's context, how do you really differentiate, throw some light onto how do you really differentiate on cases wherein you would go with a traditional AI versus an agentic versus somewhere in the middle you're talking about AI agents? How would you differentiate those? And what's necessarily Aldo's ambitions around specifically forward-looking agentic AI?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. Not a lot of retailers are really exploring. I mean, they know that it should be done. They're thinking about it, but not a lot of retailers that I know are actually doing it. So we actually are doing it and actually have done a lot. So, but before I answer that question about the agents, I just want to ensure for the audience that they understand the differences between what traditional AI, agentic AI, automation, and what really Gen AI is about. But I'm going to oversimplify it because I don't want to give a crash course on what they are. But if we take automation, for example, because that's the closest definition that people confuse with agents or agentic AI, automation is about building workflows, and it's basically um, uh, executing exactly what you tell it to do. So you're the one who's defining the process and is just going through that workflow. Traditional AI is all about outputting answers. And agentic AI is about what's really different about agents, and that's very, very important to note, is that they are outcome driven and result driven because they're goal oriented. You give it a set of goals and it defines its own path to get to that goal essentially, and it learns. So for example, if we apply this in retail, you'll see traditional retail AI retail models might say you have a stock out risk at 72%. Or I recommend you apply, let's say, $100 for this specific style. But then the human the human or another system need to go and execute on that, on what the AI is seeing in the data in terms of patterns. On the other hand, agents, they use these signals and they do the work for you within the defined guardrail. So for example, it might rebalance your inventory for you, or it might change the price automatically. So knowing this, um, now that we have explained that part, it's out of the way, I will tell you what we have done to date with AI at Aldo, and then what I think the next step will be. So what we have done at Aldo for the past few years is, as I stated in the very beginning, we built traditional machine learning models specifically for three use cases at Aldo. So one being demand forecasting to forecast sales. Demand forecast is really the foundation. With demand forecast, you can do a lot of other things. So the next logical use case for us, once we have built that demand model, was markdown optimization. So now that I know what the demand is, how can I optimize my inventory throughout the season by applying markdowns intelligently using data on the units that should we take a markdown on, and also at what percentage markdown we should take on those units, and at what frequency, to achieve several objectives for the business. In our case, we said, how can we maximize gross margin? And then the third use case was order fulfillment optimization. So now that I know demand at the store level for these products, which store at Aldo we ship from our network of stores across North America. So which store would be best suited to fulfill the order for a customer that places an online order, to get it shipped fast, and also for it to be profitable for Aldo from a GM perspective. So we already have these in place at Aldo. Now, for the third section, to answer your question,
Right.
was where we see the future. I think that um, at some point in the future, we want to integrate agents in this whole ecosystem. And I'm not saying specifically what is it that we're going to do, because this is something new. But I believe, like, my thought process is that the agents will be running certain parts of the business at some point, and this will allow not only Aldo but other businesses. If you do this intelligently, it will allow you to deploy capital in other parts of the business where there are deficiencies or you need to give a boost, let's say, things that you couldn't do before that you'll be able to do, because certain parts of the business will just operate on their own within your the guardrails that you give it, of course. So we do have some agents today at Aldo, but not at the level where it makes inventory decisions or pricing decisions. They're very low level things. Like, for example, we have a data privacy mailbox that is run by an agent today. So if someone sends an email to Aldo and says, I want to be forgotten, there's a whole thing that happens capturing the email and going and doing things. So that's really one area that we saw a lot of time saving and proper allocation of time and resources, let's say, for this specific use case. But I mean, I can speak a lot more about this topic, but I'm going to end there.
No, I think this is quite interesting because what you spoke across the three layers, the last piece, which is more towards how can some of the work pieces and workflows be really automated, or rather even forgotten to a certain extent through agentic, is uh, kind of inspiring and aspiring. But what really caught my attention is when you spoke about smarter forecasting, when you spoke about markdown optimization. I just start thinking, then what could it do for, think about larger value chains and larger supply chains, right from your upstream producers all the way till downstream distributors, the entire ecosystem, how much that could actually do by reducing overproduction and waste, especially in uh, think I mean, just to think about it from FMCG's perspective, right? I think it's a brilliant case that should be implemented and looked into very carefully. And what do where do you see that really going? Because I find that as a tremendous case where not just fashion, right? Fashion has a big print, of course, but even the rest of the FMCG, the entire industry could actually do well with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sustainability is definitely intelligence can help with sustainability, because what AI is really good at is detecting patterns in your data, essentially. So if you use this intelligence to have a smarter, let's say, pre-season demand, because everything we built at Aldo is really in season, and it's an easier problem to solve because it's very short horizon. Um, we're forecasting like on a weekly basis. We're doing a forecast for a season, which usually is 6 months. But when you're doing preseason forecasting, it becomes a more difficult problem to solve, but not impossible, because you're usually solving it for 12 months or even 18 months. Um, but if you can achieve a certain level of accuracy in your preseason forecasting, which then allows you to have a better assortment. So your sizes and your colors. Um, See, people are already doing this today, but they're doing it very intuitively and it's very subjective as well. So if you lose, unfortunately, people that work in that product development team or buyers, you lose that knowledge, that subjectiveness goes away. But if you use intelligence to have proper preseason forecasting of demand, and you also have assortment, intelligence in your assortment, and even in your allocation, whether it's DC or store level granularity for your allocation, then you'll produce really what you use and what you need. So, and that will effectively reduce the waste. And if you also incorporate markdowns when you're in your in-season management, let's say the model might say take markdowns earlier, not later in the season. So and you use those signals as demand. And in the future, instead of having maybe 2 seasons, you'll have micro seasons throughout the year. Why do we limit ourselves by having just 2 seasons, for example? Now, this might be true for certain types of retail businesses, even in the fashion. You have fast fashion that has a different, um, you know, business model than a traditional retailer in fashion. But this concept of um, micro seasons and really looking at those demand signals to produce really what's really necessary would also help with the sustainability aspect of
Right.
the question that you ask, which I find pretty interesting. So, in summary, any form of intelligence that you can use, because artificial intelligence is really good at detecting patterns in your data. So if you can leverage this to make more educated decisions, then we can benefit from it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think between you and me, I think we can just go on about this for a very long conversation. But based on everything that we spoke about and in between, I have an interesting one for you. If you were to build something greenfield, right, from a stack perspective, what where would you start, and how would that look? How would that stack look for, say, let's assume your own e-commerce, right? How what would be a starting point, and what would be your blueprint like to build upon?
Yeah. Well, definitely needs to have some intelligence in there.
Needless to say.
Yeah, needless to say. But I think like if you still need an ecom platform like Shopify, for example. I would definitely pick Shopify. Um, you still need an order management system. You still need a CRM tool, but what you need is you need to build. In my perspective, you need to be. I don't think the monolith is is effective for a retailer that wants to be nimble, and if you want to be agile, and you should have like this composable commerce situation ecosystem going on. It's something that was very near and dear to me in my previous role. So we were already composable back then in 2016, 2017 already. So headless and all this. So that still stands. But then that's the muscle part. So the muscles, they stay the same, but then you need to bring in some intelligence. So if you already have platforms out there that exist that have that intelligence baked in, then so be it. But I think the true power is really building intelligence or building models that are really that you can plug into the systems to build the e-commerce platform, but based on your own data for your own needs. So to answer your question simply, you still need an e-com platform, you still need an OMS. I would still use all that, but I would definitely bring in in-house intelligence to plug into to those, or even like build it from the ground up, agentic, not just traditional AI, because I would just allocate stuff to them to just make decisions on their own. Basically, that's what I would do.
Yeah. So that's an interesting take, right? Like have that fabric in place, and then make sure that you are actually having an agentic fabric necessarily where it builds on top of the muscles of the systems. Yeah, that's an interesting take on how we can look at it. Now, having done all of this for last whatever uh, 10 15 years in terms of what you're doing in Aldo, the movement that you have seen, the undercurrents, the innovation, etc., what's what's it from an innovation perspective, what's it from a strategic innovation or in general innovation perspective, pers- keeping in line with say AI solutions where you started, the losses and wins, everything in between. What's that lesson about innovation, if there is one that you would like to share when we look at it from a digital engineering, digital commerce perspective? What's your one takeaway on innovation?
Um, I'm going to answer this differently. You can have the best innovation, and you can have the best execution, but in my experience, especially um, throughout the last 2 years. Now, this is true for anything, but especially for the last 2 years, where I have worked very closely with AI, like working with PhDs and data scientists, and also the business people to solve problems for them. You can have the best innovation, the best technology, the best execution, but if you don't have um, change management or even the adoption with the users, then everything that you have built is just for nothing. It won't really matter. So this is the one big lesson that I've learned in the past few years, pertaining specifically to the AI initiatives that I oversee. So it's gonna be like I'm gonna frame it differently. I'm gonna give some tips or maybe some lessons learned from my experience. If anyone out there wants to get into this AI journey, make sure that you involve the teams that you're solving the problems for. Make sure you involve them from the beginning, in your process. When you're building these models, make sure that they understand how these models are built. Don't just become a black box. Make sure you have explainability, meaning that if your model has gives you this output, then why is it making that decision? Model also makes mistakes, so you need to have those that in mind. So you just need to be very transparent in what you're building, and you need to have all those factors in explainability and all this and involving them, because that's going to drive them to adopt the tool and create trust in the tool. Because if you don't have that, then it's all going to be for nothing. Even if you have agents in place, I'm a believer that we shouldn't just let AIs run on their own. You should have human oversight in order to be successful and in the outcomes that you want to achieve. So I hope that answered your question, but that's just my little 2 cents I wanted to give, pertaining my experience. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think an idea in isolation without any validation, without really checking with who your actual customers, consumers of that idea is going to be, is not going to take you anywhere. So I think absolutely spot on that, right? Now, here's something interesting for me that I would want to do, as I consider this more of a talk show, disruption talk. Are you ready for some rapid fire? I just have three of them, right?
Okay.
Whether you are not,
Okay.
I'll just go ahead.
Okay.
Three quick questions. The first one, AI and e-commerce. What is the biggest hype or nonsense that you hear?
Oh, this is going to be easy. A lot of vendors are talking about, oh, we have now agentic flows. Don't just be very careful when you hear that in sales pitches and stuff. Just double check. Do your research.
Cool. Something more personal and underrated leadership skill, in your opinion.
An underrated leadership skill. I think remaining calm when things go wrong. A lot
All
of
right.
leaders are very feisty, but if you remain calm and composed when things go wrong, I think it's a superpower. Yeah.
And what's your favorite trick to get your team's attention?
Um, I don't know. It doesn't really work really well when it's virtual, but in person it always works with me. You stand up and you just don't say a word, and they all
That's a
just
good one. That's a
they
good
become very. They're like, "What's happening?" Yeah.
That's a good one. Hey Armin, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you here. Of course, our conversation continues, but for the audience, it has been a pleasure to have to host this with you. And for the audience, we are open for any comments or questions, and we would try to respond to it offline after this. So thank you. Thanks for your time, Armin, and thanks to anyone who has tuned in for this.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Gaurab. Thanks for everyone who joined and listened. Appreciate it.